She was fleeing an arranged marriage when a lone rancher offered her his name and his land. Anya had always known her life would follow a path chosen by others. From the moment she could remember, her family had planned everything for her, from the clothes she wore to the conversations she was allowed to have. But the one thing that terrified her most was the future they had decided for her. An arranged marriage to a man she had never met. He was older, wealthy, and respected in the village, but to Anya, he was nothing more than a stranger who would decide the course of her life. She could not imagine spending her days under his authority, bound by tradition, stripped of her freedom. She tried to explain to her parents that she wanted to choose her own path, that she dreamed of a life where her voice mattered. Her words, however, were met with silence, a furrowed brow, and the cold reminder that family and tradition came first. Her mother, though gentle at times, reminded her that obedience was a virtue, and any disobedience would bring shame. Her father was stricter, believing that a good marriage secured a woman's place in society. Anya had seen her friends marry and vanish into lives they did not choose. The thought of the same fate for herself filled her with a quiet desperation. One night, as the household slept under the dim glow of lanterns, Anya lay awake on her narrow bed. The wind rustled through the small window, carrying the scent of fields and the faint sound of distant animals. Her heart ached with longing for freedom. She thought about the wide world beyond the village, the hills, rivers, and forests she had only read about in books. She imagined herself walking those paths, feeling the sun on her face, making her own decisions for the first time in her life.
The thought was terrifying yet thrilling.
She knew she could not wait any longer. The arranged marriage was set for the next month, and each day that passed brought her closer to a life she did not want. She began planning in secret. She packed a small bag with essentials, a few changes of clothes, a loaf of bread, a jar of water, a small knife for protection, and a book she had cherished since childhood. Every item had a purpose, and she checked her bag over and over to make sure she had not forgotten anything. The night she decided to leave, the village was quiet. Even the animals seemed to sense the hush of the hour. Anya slipped from her bed, careful not to wake her parents. She moved silently through the small house, her feet barely making a sound on the wooden floor. Her heart pounded, each beat echoing in her ears. She paused at the door, looking back at the home that had been her entire world. Fear mingled with excitement, but she knew she had made the right decision. Outside, the air was cool and crisp. The stars were scattered across the sky, offering a sense of guidance, as if the universe itself was acknowledging her courage. She moved quickly, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the lamps that flickered along the narrow streets of the village. Every step took her farther from the life she had known and closer to the unknown. The fear of discovery was constant. If anyone caught her, her parents would bring her back, and she would have no second chance. The journey was harder than she imagined. Her feet ached, and the night air was sharper than she expected. She avoided the main roads, which were patrolled by neighbors and watchful villagers. Instead, she followed narrow dirt paths and trails through the woods surrounding the village. The forest was dense, filled with sounds that made her both uneasy and alert. Owls hooted, leaves rustled, and branches snapped underfoot. Every noise sent a shiver down her spine, yet she pressed on. Hunger gnawed at her, but she rationed the small bread she had brought. Water was scarce, and she had to rely on small streams and puddles she found along the way. The journey was not only physical but emotional. Memories of her childhood flashed before her eyes. The laughter with her friends, the stories her grandmother told, the warmth of her mother's embrace. She wondered if she would ever see them again. Despite the sadness, she clung to the hope of a life where she could choose her own path. The first night alone in the woods was the hardest. She found a small clearing covered with fallen leaves and used her coat as a makeshift bed. She kept the knife close, alert for any signs of danger. The darkness was intimidating, and every sound seemed amplified. She thought about the risks she had taken and questioned if she was brave or foolish. But sleep came slowly, and when it did, it was shallow and filled with restless dreams. Morning brought a new set of challenges. She had to find food and navigate through the unfamiliar terrain. The forest was vast, and every direction seemed similar. She relied on instinct, intuition, and the faint memory of landmarks she had studied on maps she had secretly read as a child. She encountered small animals, birds, and the occasional sign of human life. Footprints, fences, and distant smoke from chimneys. But she avoided people, not yet ready to explain her flight. Over the following days, Anya traveled tirelessly. She learned to move quietly, to forage for small berries, and to find safe places to rest. She discovered a strength within herself she had never known. Each challenge she overcame, from crossing a stream to evading a suspicious passerby, made her feel more capable, more in control of her life. She was learning what it meant to survive on her own. Despite her growing confidence, loneliness was a constant companion. Nights were the hardest, filled with memories and fears. She missed the sound of her mother's voice, the comfort of familiar walls, and the simplicity of her old life. She often whispered to herself as if speaking aloud would keep her fears at bay. "I will make it. I will find freedom. I will live my life." These words became a mantra, a source of courage that kept her moving forward. On the 5th day of her journey, she stumbled upon a winding path that led to a wide valley. The view took her breath away. Rolling hills covered in green grass, a distant river that glimmered in the sunlight, and a sky so vast it seemed endless. For a moment she allowed herself to rest, to breathe in the beauty of the world she was stepping into. It was a small victory, a reminder that her decision to leave had not been in vain. As she made her way down the valley, she realized that she was venturing into truly unknown territory. She did not know who lived nearby, whether there would be people willing to help, or if she would encounter danger. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear, but she also felt a growing sense of determination. She had left behind a life that was suffocating, and now every step forward was a step toward independence. By the end of the first week, Anya was physically exhausted, but mentally sharper than ever. Her senses had become attuned to the forest, the way the wind changed direction, the sounds that indicated nearby animals or humans, the subtle differences in the terrain. She realized that she was not just fleeing, she was learning how to navigate the world on her own. Each small skill she mastered, from finding safe drinking water to building a temporary shelter, was a step toward her freedom. Yet, despite her growing resilience, fear remained. She knew that her parents might search for her, that the villagers might report sightings, and that dangers could come from strangers who might not understand her situation. She had to remain vigilant, cautious, and clever. But she also began to feel a spark of hope, a belief that somewhere, beyond the next hill or around the next bend, there could be a place where she could belong on her own terms. It was during this time that Anya first thought about the possibility of help. She had been entirely alone for days, surviving through her own determination and ingenuity. But the thought of someone who might understand her plight, someone who might offer safety and kindness without demanding obedience, became a small, flickering hope in her heart. She did not yet know where to find such a person, but the idea gave her courage to continue moving forward. By the end of the second week, Anya had traveled far from the village she had once called home. The forests gave way to open fields. The air smelled fresher, and the sounds of civilization became faint in the distance. She had survived storms, hunger, and exhaustion, and each day had made her stronger. She had also begun to understand herself in ways she never had before. Her limits, her resilience, her need for freedom. And then, one morning, as the sun rose over the rolling hills, Anya saw something she had not expected. A distant structure, a large house with land stretching around it, livestock grazing peacefully in the fields. It was the first sign of human life she had seen in days. Her heart leapt with cautious hope. Perhaps she thought she had finally found a place where she could rest, where she could be safe. She did not know what awaited her there, but she knew that she had come too far to turn back now. Anya approached slowly, staying hidden at first, observing the life of the place from a distance. She saw a man working with the animals, strong and focused, his movements confident and calm. There was something reassuring in the way he handled the animals and the land. She did not know him, but something in her heart whispered that perhaps this place and this man might offer the safety and freedom she had been searching for. And so, with a mixture of fear, hope, and determination, Anya took a deep breath and stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. Anya stayed hidden among the tall grass at the edge of the fields, her heart beating fast. She could see the man clearly now, moving with ease among the animals. He was tall, strong, and had the kind of calm presence that made the world seem safe, even in the middle of nowhere. She had never met anyone like him before. For the first time since leaving her village, she felt a strange mix of hope and fear. Perhaps this was the chance she had been waiting for. But how could she know if he would be kind or suspicious of her sudden appearance? She waited until he turned his back, then took a few careful steps toward a small grove of trees near the edge of his land. She needed a safe place to rest and think. She had been traveling alone for almost 2 weeks now, surviving on small bits of food and water she had found along the way. Her legs ached constantly, her skin was tanned and sunburned, and her hair, once neat, now hung in tangled strands around her shoulders. Despite the exhaustion, she felt alive in a way she never had before. Every step, every decision had been hers alone. The man finally noticed movement near the trees. He stopped, his sharp eyes scanning the area. Anya froze, unsure if she should run or stay. To her surprise, he didn't call out or approach immediately. Instead, he watched silently, his posture relaxed but alert. After a moment, he stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "Hello there," he said. "Are you lost?" Anya's throat tightened. She had practiced what she might say in her head, but now that the moment had come, words felt impossible. "I don't mean any trouble," she stammered. "I'm just alone." The man studied her for a moment, his gaze steady but not threatening. "Alone, huh? You've been walking far?" he asked. His tone was gentle, not demanding. There was a kindness in his voice that made Anya relax just a little. She nodded. "Yes, I've been traveling for a long time," she admitted. I don't have anywhere to go." He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "I see. Well, you can stay here for a while if you need," he said. "My name is Thomas. I have a place you can rest. There's water, food, and shelter. But you have to follow the rules of the land while you're here." Anya's heart leapt with relief, though she hesitated. She had been trained to be cautious of strangers, to trust only herself. But something about Thomas seemed different. There was no judgment in his eyes, no sense that he expected her to be someone she wasn't. He seemed honest. And after so many days of fear and uncertainty, honesty felt like a gift. "Thank you," she whispered.
I just need a safe place for a little while." Thomas nodded and gestured for her to follow him.
He led her along a narrow path that wound between fields and trees. As they walked, he said little, allowing Anya to take in the surroundings. She noticed the way the sunlight reflected off the grass, the gentle sound of a stream nearby, and the calm order of the animals grazing in the fields. It was a life far removed from the cramped, controlled environment of her village. Here there was space, freedom, and possibility. When they reached the house, Thomas showed her a small room near the back. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, with a bed, a table, and a window that looked out over the fields. "This will be your room while you're here," he said. "You can rest, eat, and clean up.
No one will bother you." Anya sank onto the bed, overwhelmed by gratitude.
For the first time in her life, someone was offering her help, without expecting anything in return. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away, determined to stay composed. "Thank you. Truly," she said softly. Thomas gave a small nod and left the room, giving her space. Anya took a deep breath, listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch. She realized that she was safe, at least for now. The fear that had been her constant companion for days was beginning to ease, replaced by a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she could survive in this new place. The next morning, Thomas returned with food and fresh water. He explained the basics of life on the ranch, the animals, the crops, the chores that needed to be done each day. Anya listened carefully, absorbing every word. She had no experience with farm life, but she was eager to learn. Survival had taught her resilience, and she was determined not to waste this opportunity. Over the next few days, Anya began to adjust to the rhythm of ranch life. She helped feed the animals, gather eggs, and carry water from the stream. Each task, though unfamiliar, became a chance to prove to herself that she was capable. Thomas guided her patiently, offering advice without criticism, allowing her to make mistakes and learn from them. Slowly, she began to feel a sense of belonging. Despite the progress, Anya remained cautious. She did not yet trust fully, and she kept the story of her flight from her village private, sharing only that she had needed to leave home. Thomas, in turn, respected her privacy, never pressing for details. This mutual respect created a quiet bond between them, a sense of safety that Anya had not known in years. As days turned into weeks, Anya's confidence grew. She learned how to handle the animals with care, how to identify plants and herbs, and how to maintain the small house. The physical labor was demanding, but she welcomed it. It gave her a sense of purpose and reminded her that she was no longer helpless. She was learning to shape her own life, one action at a time. One evening after a long day of work, Anya sat on the porch of the small house, watching the sun dip below the hills. Thomas joined her quietly, carrying a lantern. They sat in silence for a few moments, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cows, the chirping of crickets, and the distant rustle of trees in the wind. "You've adapted well," Thomas said finally, his voice low and steady. "Most people would have given up by now, but you keep going." Anya looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his words. "I had to," she said softly. "I didn't have a choice, but I'm glad I kept going. I feel stronger here, even though it's hard." Thomas nodded. "Hardship teaches more than comfort ever could," he said, "and you're learning fast. You'll be able to take care of yourself, no matter what comes next." Anya felt a swell of gratitude. It was rare for someone to acknowledge her efforts without judgment. In the village, accomplishments were often overlooked, especially for women. Here, her efforts mattered, and she was seen. As the days passed, the bond between Anya and Thomas grew, though it remained grounded in respect and trust. He never pressured her, never asked for explanation she wasn't ready to give. He simply offered guidance, protection, and a sense of stability she had never known. In return, Anya worked diligently, learning not only the practical skills needed to survive, but also the quiet strength of independence. Despite the safety of the ranch, Anya could not completely forget the life she had left behind. Memories of her village, her family, and the impending marriage still haunted her at times. Nights were the hardest, filled with dreams of being discovered or forced to return. But each morning the reality of the ranch reassured her. She had found a sanctuary, a place where she could begin anew, even if the past lingered in her mind. One day Thomas brought a young calf that had been born on the ranch. He handed it to Anya, showing her how to care for it. She laughed softly as the animal nuzzled her, feeling a warmth in her chest she had not felt in months. "I never thought I'd enjoy this," she admitted. "I never thought I could care for something like this on my own." Thomas smiled, a rare softness in his eyes. "You're capable of more than you realize," he said. "Strength comes in many forms. Caring for this calf, learning to live on this land, it's all part of building yourself." Anya nodded, feeling a sense of pride swell within her. She was not just surviving, she was growing, learning, and discovering the limits of her own resilience. Each task, each moment, was a step toward freedom, toward a life she could claim for herself. As the weeks turned into a month, Anya began to feel a sense of peace she had never known. The fear that had driven her to flee was still there in the background, but it no longer controlled her. She was learning to trust, to rely on her own abilities, and to find comfort in the kindness of another human being. One afternoon, as she rested by the stream, she thought about the future. She did not know what it would hold, but for the first time she felt that she had the power to shape it. She could choose her path, make her own decisions, and live a life guided by her own values rather than the expectations of others. And as she looked back toward the house and the man who had offered her shelter, she realized something important. She was not just a fugitive from her past. She was becoming someone new. A woman who had faced fear, embraced uncertainty, and discovered the strength to survive. And in that discovery, she found a sense of hope that no arranged marriage, no tradition, could ever take away. Weeks passed on the ranch, and Anya had begun to feel that the land, the animals, and even Thomas were becoming a part of her life. The fear that had driven her from her village seemed to fade a little each day, replaced by a cautious sense of hope. She was learning to trust herself, to trust her instincts, and to believe that she could survive in a world that had once seemed so large and frightening. But still, there was a part of her that wondered what would come next. How long could she remain here? And what would her life look like if she stayed? Thomas had noticed her growing confidence. He saw how she moved with more assurance, how she handled the animals with care, and how she learned the rhythms of the land. He admired her determination and resilience, traits that reminded him of the hard work and courage it took to live a life close to the earth. Yet he also understood that Anya had come to the ranch for more than survival. She had come seeking safety, a place where she could begin again. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Thomas asked Anya to join him on the porch. They sat quietly for a while, listening to the soft sounds of the animals settling in for the night. The breeze carried the faint scent of hay and earth, and the sky above them seemed endless.
"You've been here for a while now," Thomas said, breaking the silence.
"You've learned quickly, and you've shown a strength I don't see very often. But I can tell there's more on your mind than the work of the ranch." Anya looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. She had grown comfortable around Thomas, but she had not yet shared the full story of her flight from her village. The thought of revealing everything, her parents, the arranged marriage, the fear and desperation that had driven her to leave, made her stomach tighten. I don't know if I can explain it all," she said softly. "It's complicated." Thomas nodded, his expression patient and understanding. "You don't have to explain everything right away," he said. "But I want you to know that whatever it is, you're safe here. No one will force you to do anything against your will. You're free to make your own choices." Anya felt a lump in her throat. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight she had never experienced. Freedom. The word seemed almost foreign, yet it filled her with warmth. For the first time since she had fled her village, she realized that someone could offer her safety and respect without expecting anything in return. Over the next few days, Anya and Thomas continued their routine on the ranch, but the quiet moments between chores allowed them to talk more openly. Anya shared small stories from her past, careful not to reveal too much too soon. She spoke of the village, the narrow streets, the river that ran through it, and the small market where she had spent hours watching people go about their lives. Thomas listened without judgment, asking gentle questions that allowed her to open up at her own pace. One afternoon, while repairing a fence near the edge of the pasture, Thomas spoke about the responsibilities of the land. "This ranch," he said, "is more than just land and animals. It's a place where people can build something for themselves. It's work, yes, but it's also freedom. You see what I mean?" Anya paused, hammer in hand, and looked out across the fields. The sun sparkled on the river in the distance, and the animals grazed peacefully in the fading light. She understood exactly what he meant. Here, she could work, learn, and grow. She could make her own decisions. And most importantly, she could be herself. That evening, Thomas suggested they take a walk along the ridge overlooking the ranch. The sky was painted in deep oranges and purples, and the air carried the scent of wildflowers and earth. As they walked, he spoke softly, almost as if he were speaking to himself. "You've done well, Anya," he said finally. "You've faced challenges most people wouldn't even dare. You've shown courage, resourcefulness, and determination. And you've done it all without losing your kindness or your heart." Anya felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had never heard anyone speak to her this way. Her life in the village had been filled with rules, expectations, and limits. Here, Someone was recognizing her for who she truly was. "Thank you," she said quietly. I couldn't have made it without you giving me a place to stay." Thomas looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Anya, I want to offer you something more than just shelter. I want to give you a chance to truly start over." Anya's heart skipped a beat. She had been so focused on surviving that she had not thought beyond the next day, the next meal, the next night of safety. The idea of a true new beginning, one where she could build her life independently, was almost overwhelming. I don't understand," she said softly. Thomas took a deep breath.
"I want to give you my name and my land," he said. "Not because I expect anything in return, but because I want you to have a place of your own."
"You'll be recognized, protected, and free to live as you choose. You won't have to fear anyone from your past or anyone who might try to control you." Anya stared at him, unable to speak at first. The weight of his offer was immense. A place to belong. A name that carried respect. Land she could call her own. It was everything she had hoped for but had never dared to imagine. Yet fear and doubt lingered in the corners of her mind. Could she truly accept such generosity? Would she be betraying her independence by relying on another person? I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything now," Thomas replied gently. "Take your time. Think about it. This offer isn't something I give lightly, but I also won't pressure you. I want you to make the choice freely, just as you've done since you left your village. You've proven you can think for yourself, act for yourself, and now you can choose your future." For hours after that conversation, Anya wandered through the fields and along the stream, thinking deeply. She considered her life in the village, the strict rules, the fear, the impending marriage. And then she thought about the ranch, the freedom, the safety, the possibility to build a life of her own choosing. She realized that accepting Thomas's offer did not mean giving up her independence. Instead, it could be the foundation on which she could grow, learn, and thrive. Over the next few days, she observed the land carefully, imagining herself working it, tending to the animals, and living freely without fear. Each day, the idea of accepting the offer became less intimidating and more empowering. She began to see it not as a gift she was taking, but as an opportunity she was earning through her courage, perseverance, and determination. Finally, one morning, Anya approached Thomas as he was feeding the livestock. She felt a mixture of nervousness and relief, her heart pounding in her chest.
"Thomas," she said, her voice steady but soft, I would like to accept your offer. I want to take your name and live on this land."
I want to build my life here."
Thomas looked at her, his eyes reflecting both respect and pride.
"Are you sure, Anya? This is your choice."
"No one is forcing you."
"Yes," she said firmly. "I've thought about it.
"I want this. I want to live my life on my own terms, and I trust you to let me do that." A slow smile spread across Thomas's face. "Then it's yours," he said simply. "The land, the name, and the freedom to live as you choose. Welcome home, Anya." Anya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. For the first time in her life, she truly felt safe, respected, and free. The weight of fear and uncertainty she had carried for so long began to lift. She had faced incredible challenges, traveled through unknown lands, and survived on her own, and now she had the chance to start anew. Over the next few weeks, Anya began the process of claiming her new life. She learned more about managing the land, handling legal matters, and caring for the animals. Thomas continued to guide her, but gave her space to make her own decisions, reinforcing the independence she had fought so hard to achieve. Each day brought new lessons, small victories, and a growing sense of pride. Anya also began to feel a deeper connection to Thomas, not as a guardian or benefactor, but as someone who had seen her courage and respected her choices. There was a quiet understanding between them, a bond formed through trust, patience, and mutual respect. She realized that relationships could be built on kindness, support, and equality, not just tradition or expectation. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Anya stood at the edge of the pasture. looking out over the land that was now hers. The animals grazed peacefully, the sky glowed in shades of gold and pink, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of the earth she had fought so hard to claim. She felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. Anya had escaped the life that had been forced upon her. She had survived danger, fear, and uncertainty, and now, with Thomas's offer, she had the freedom to create her own future. It was a new beginning, one she had earned through courage, determination, and a refusal to surrender her voice. As night fell and the stars appeared in the sky, Anya realized something profound. She was no longer running. She was home. Anya woke early that morning with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. The first rays of sunlight touched the fields, painting them in gold, and she felt a thrill of excitement at the thought of the day ahead. The land was hers now, and she had the freedom to shape her life as she chose. For years she had been running from expectations, fear, and tradition. And now she could finally stay, not as a visitor, not as a fugitive, but as a woman in control of her own destiny. Thomas greeted her with a nod as she stepped outside. "Good morning, Anya. Ready for another day?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. "Yes," she replied, smiling. "I want to learn more today. I want to do things right, and I want to take care of the land." Thomas handed her a basket filled with fresh eggs. "You'll start with feeding the animals. I'll help if you need me, but I want you to do it yourself. That way you can see what needs attention and take responsibility for it." Anya took the basket and walked toward the barn. She moved with confidence, remembering the lessons Thomas had taught her. She checked the animals, fed them carefully, and even noticed a few small things that needed fixing. A broken fence panel here, a bucket out of place there. She began to see the ranch not as someone else's property, but as her own, a place where her choices mattered. After feeding the animals, Anya moved on to the fields. She inspected the crops, noticing which areas needed water and which soil could use extra care. She worked under the sun, her arms sore but her heart full. There was a satisfaction in seeing the results of her labor, in knowing that she could create something that was both useful and beautiful. Thomas observed her quietly from a distance, a small smile on his face. He had watched her grow from a frightened, uncertain girl into a capable, determined woman. He had offered her shelter, guidance, and protection, but he had never pushed her. And now, seeing her work with skill and confidence, he knew she had truly embraced the independence he had hoped to give her. By midday, Anya had finished her chores. She washed her hands in the stream, feeling the cool water against her skin, and took a moment to breathe. The wind carried the scent of the earth, the grass, and the animals, and for the first time in a long time, she felt completely at peace. She had survived her journey, accepted Thomas's offer, and now she was building a life of her own. Over the next few weeks, Anya's life settled into a rhythm. She woke early, cared for the animals, tended the fields, and learned how to manage the house. She grew skilled at repairing fences, planting seeds, and organizing the small farm's tasks. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them with a determination, knowing that she had the power to solve her problems and make the land thrive. Evenings became a time for reflection. Anya would sit on the porch, watching the sun set behind the hills, the sky turning shades of pink and purple. She would listen to the soft sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cows, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the occasional call of a bird, and feel a deep sense of belonging. She had come from a life where every choice had been made for her, and now she was free to live, learn, and grow on her own terms. Thomas continued to be a steady presence in her life. He offered advice when she asked for it, shared stories about the land, and guided her through difficult tasks. But he never commanded, never criticized unnecessarily, and never imposed his own expectations on her. He respected her autonomy, and in doing so he helped her discover the strength and confidence that had always been inside her. One afternoon, as Anya was repairing a gate near the edge of the pasture, Thomas joined her. He handed her a hammer and watched as she worked. "You're learning quickly," he said. "Soon you'll be able to manage everything on your own." Anya smiled. "I think I'm ready," she said. I want to take full responsibility for the ranch. I want to make decisions, care for the animals, and keep everything running well. This land, it's my home now." Thomas nodded, a proud expression on his face. "It is your home," he said simply, "and I have no doubt you'll do well. You've faced challenges that would have broken most people, and you've come out stronger. This land is in good hands with you." As the weeks turned into months, Anya's confidence and independence grew. She learned to plan for the seasons, to store food for winter, and to handle emergencies that arose on the ranch. She became skilled with tools, learned to ride the horses, and even began experimenting with planting new crops. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced her sense of self and her belief in her own abilities. Anya also became known in the nearby community. At first, neighbors were curious about the young woman living independently on the ranch, but as they saw her dedication, her hard work, and her kindness, they began to respect her. She was no longer just Thomas's guest or the girl who ran away from her village. She was Anya, a capable and independent woman who had built her life with courage and determination. Despite her busy days, Anya never forgot the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the night she had spent in the forest, the fear that had driven her forward, and the small moments of hope that had kept her going. Those memories reminded her of her strength and resilience, and she carried them with her as a source of pride and motivation. One day, a group of villagers from her old home came to the area for business. They recognized her name and were surprised to see her living independently on the ranch. Some were curious, some judgmental, but Anya stood tall, calm, and confident. She explained her life simply and honestly, without anger or defensiveness. The villagers saw her courage and determination, and though some were shocked, they could not deny her independence and success. Anya realized that freedom was not just about escaping her past. It was about living in a way that reflected her values, choices, and strength. She had taken a frightening step into the unknown and had turned it into a life filled with purpose, joy, and growth. Over time, she began to invest in the land even more deeply. She planted gardens, built new structures for the animals, and created systems to make the ranch run efficiently. She learned to budget her resources, plan for the seasons, and anticipate challenges before they became problems. The land responded to her care, and in return, she felt a profound sense of connection and satisfaction. Thomas continued to be her friend and mentor, but their relationship was grounded in equality and mutual respect. He never demanded more than she was willing to give, and he never took credit for her accomplishments. Anya knew that she had earned her life, her land, and her independence through her own courage and hard work. Evenings became a time for quiet reflection. Anya would sit on the porch looking out over the fields and hills and think about how far she had come. The fear, uncertainty, and pain of her past seemed distant now, replaced by a sense of fulfillment and peace. She realized that she had not only survived but thrived, and that the life she had built was something to be proud of. One night, as she looked at the stars, Anya whispered a quiet thank you to herself, to Thomas, and to the journey that had led her here. She had faced fear, embraced uncertainty, and discovered a strength she had never known. And in doing so, she had created a life of freedom, purpose, and possibility. As the months turned into years, Anya became a respected figure in the area. She offered help to travelers, shared knowledge about the land, and became a symbol of independence and resilience. She had transformed not only her own life, but the lives of those around her, showing that courage, determination, and kindness could overcome even the most difficult circumstances. And through it all, she never forgot the lessons she had learned on the journey: the importance of trust, the power of perseverance, and the value of self-reliance. The land, the animals, and the life she had built were reminders that she had the strength to face any challenge, the wisdom to make her own decisions, and the freedom to live life on her own terms. Anya had fled her village out of fear, uncertainty, and desperation. But through courage, determination, and the support of someone who respected her, she had transformed that fear into freedom. She had taken a chance on life, and in doing so she had created a home, a future, and a self she could be proud of. As the sun set over the ranch, casting long shadows across the fields, Anya stood on a small hill overlooking her land. The wind carried the scent of earth and grass, and the soft sounds of animals settling for the night filled the air. She breathed deeply, feeling a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. Anya had found more than a home. She had found herself, and in that discovery, she knew she was truly free.